Agnes isn't choosing a husband. She might be choosing who destroys Gilead. And the most dangerous part, the people in charge think they're in control. But if you look closely at what's happening, this entire marriage process isn't just about tradition or duty. It's a high-stakes game of power, manipulation, and quiet rebellion. And right at the center of it is a girl who isn't supposed to matter, but actually changes everything. What we're watching unfold isn't just another arranged marriage storyline. It's a system tightening its grip while cracks begin to form underneath. The aunts pairing the girls, the careful selection of suitors, the formal visits. It all looks structured, controlled, almost ritualistic. But beneath that surface, there's tension. Because this time, the girl in question isn't just any girl. Agnes is different. And the system knows it, even if it refuses to say it out loud. Let's ground this for a second. The Greens, like the other families, are participating in Gilead's rigid courtship system. The girls are matched with 2 or 3 potential suitors, men of status, usually commanders or those about to rise into power. These matches aren't about love. They're about alliances, stability, and control. Every marriage is calculated. Every pairing serves a purpose. The aunts oversee this process like architects, ensuring that everything aligns with Gilead's values. But when it comes to Agnes, something feels off from the beginning. And that's because Agnes isn't just Agnes. She is Hannah, June's daughter. Now think about what that means inside a society like Gilead. June isn't just a former handmaid. She's a symbol, a rebel, a woman who defied the system again and again. Her name carries weight, and in a regime obsessed with purity, obedience, and control, having her bloodline tied to one of their ideal daughters is a problem. The aunts know this. You can see it in how they talk about Agnes. There's hesitation, there's caution. They're not just trying to find her a husband, they're trying to manage a risk. Because if the wrong person finds out who Agnes really is, it could affect everything. Suitors could back out. Questions could be raised. And in Gilead, questions are dangerous. But this is where Aunt Lydia becomes very interesting. Instead of allowing the conversation to spiral into fear about Agnes's origins, Lydia redirects it. She shifts the focus to something more acceptable within the Gilead framework: genetics, compatibility, the avoidance of inbreeding. On the surface, it sounds like she's just doing her job, but if you pay attention, it's actually a subtle form of protection. She's controlling the narrative. She's making sure that Agnes's identity doesn't become the central issue. And that tells you something critical. Lydia isn't just enforcing the system. She's navigating it, carefully, strategically. And that brings us to the moment that changes everything. Agnes makes a move. She approaches Aunt Lydia and asks for Garth Chapin to be added to her list of suitors. Now, pause there, because this is not normal. Girls in Gilead don't make requests like this. They don't insert themselves into the decision-making process. They're taught to accept, to obey, to trust the system. But Agnes doesn't do that. She steps forward and names who she wants. That's not just courage, that's intention. And Lydia's response, she agrees. No long debate, no dismissal, just acceptance. And that's where the situation stops being simple and starts becoming dangerous. Because Garth Chapin is not like the other suitors. He's not an established commander. He doesn't have years of service or a long-standing reputation. He's on the rise, yes, but he's not the obvious choice. In fact, compared to the other men, he's a risk. So why would Lydia allow it? Aunt Vidala immediately questions the decision, and she's right to do so. From her perspective, it doesn't make sense. Why include someone who hasn't proven themselves yet when there are more suitable, more powerful options? But here's where things get interesting. What if Lydia knows something Vidala doesn't? Because there's a possibility, one the show quietly hints at, that Garth is connected to Mayday. And if that's true, then this entire situation changes. This isn't about Agnes finding a husband. This is about infiltration. Think about the implications. If Garth becomes a commander and marries Agnes, he gains access to the inner workings of Gilead's elite. He's no longer on the outside looking in. He's inside the room. Decisions, strategies, secrets, all within reach. And Agnes, she becomes the bridge. Whether she fully understands it or not, she becomes part of something much bigger than herself, a connection between the system and the resistance, a position that could either help dismantle Gilead or get her killed. Now, look back at Lydia's decision. It starts to feel less like approval and more like permission. Because Lydia isn't careless, she doesn't make random choices. Everything she does is calculated. So if she's allowing Garth into the suitor pool, it suggests she sees value in it. Maybe she suspects his connection to Mayday. Maybe she's testing something. Or maybe, just maybe, she's quietly bending the rules in a way that no one else dares. And that puts her in a very dangerous position. Because if this goes wrong, she won't be able to hide behind protocol. People like Vidala are already watching her, already questioning her decisions. It wouldn't take much for suspicion to turn into accusation. And then Gilead, once that happens, there's no coming back. Now, shift your focus to the Green household, because this is where the final decision will be made. Agnes may have made her request, Lydia may have supported it, but ultimately the power lies with Commander Mackenzie and his wife. They're the ones who will choose who Agnes marries, and their decision won't be based on emotion. It'll be based on advantage. Commander Mackenzie cares about status, about reputation, about what benefits his family. Marrying Agnes to a strong, established commander would reinforce their position instantly. It would be safe, predictable, approved. Choosing Garth, on the other hand, introduces uncertainty. He's new, unproven, a potential asset or a potential liability. And in a system like Gilead, uncertainty is dangerous. So even if Agnes wants him, even if Lydia supports it, there's a very real chance that decision gets shut down, that Agnes is married off to someone else, someone more powerful, someone more acceptable. And if that happens, it reinforces the system's control completely. But if it doesn't, if Garth is chosen, then everything changes. Because now you have a potential Mayday operative embedded at the highest level of society. You have access, influence, opportunity, the kind of advantage the resistance rarely gets. But you also have risk, because secrets don't stay hidden forever. If Garth is exposed, it won't just be him who pays the price. Agnes will be implicated. Lydia will be questioned, and anyone connected to that decision will come under scrutiny. What started as a strategic move could quickly turn into a full-scale collapse. And that's what makes this storyline so tense, because it's balanced on a knife's edge. Now, let's talk about Commander Judd, because his situation might seem separate, but it's actually connected by the same underlying theme: control over women, reproduction, and power. Penny's miscarriage is devastating, not just emotionally, but socially. In Gilead, a woman's value is tied to her ability to produce children, so when Penny loses the baby, it puts her in a vulnerable position. Her worth, her stability, even her safety, all suddenly uncertain. Judd's reaction, however, is what stands out. He refuses to take a handmaid, and that's not normal. In Gilead, this would be the expected solution. It's encouraged, practically mandated. So why is he resisting? At first glance, it might seem like compassion. Maybe he cares about Penny. Maybe he doesn't want to replace her or undermine her role. But that kind of emotional reasoning doesn't fully align with the world they live in. So you have to look deeper. This could be about pride, about image, about not wanting to appear weak or incapable. But even that doesn't fully explain the intensity of his refusal, which leads to a darker possibility. What if he's thinking ahead? If Penny dies, he becomes a widower, and then Gilead, that resets everything. He becomes eligible for remarriage, a fresh start, a new wife, a new chance to fulfill his duty without the complications of failure. It's a brutal thought, but it fits the logic of the system, and the show doesn't confirm it. It just leaves it there, quietly, forcing you to question his motives every time he appears on screen. When you step back and look at both storylines together, a pattern becomes clear. This isn't about love, it's about control. Agnes's marriage isn't a personal milestone, it's a strategic move within a larger system. Judd's decisions aren't emotional, they're calculated within the same framework. Every relationship, every pairing, every outcome is designed to maintain power. But power systems always have weak points. And right now, Agnes might be one of them. Because whether she realizes it or not, her choices are creating tension within the system. She's asking for something different, something unexpected. And then a place like Gilead, even the smallest deviation can have massive consequences. So the real question isn't just whether Agnes will marry the love of her life. It's whether her marriage will become the moment everything starts to unravel. Because if she marries Garth, and if he is connected to Mayday, then Gilead isn't just arranging a wedding. It's opening the door to its own destruction. And the scariest part, they won't even see it coming.